Jules Vasquez, welcome back to the podcast. So, those of you that caught Jules on the last podcast conversation will remember we had an amazing conversation around, preventing cognitive decline and dementia and brain health and all that fun stuff that happens to us while we age. This conversation I'm looking forward to because this is special. This is something different, and I hope you'll all enjoy it. Before we get into it, let me reintroduce Jules again. Jules Vasquez is a health informaticist and health scientist trained in neuroscience, specializing in brain body transformation. She is the founder of Brain Body by Jules, a practice dedicated to helping people shift subconscious patterns, optimize energy, and embody their future selves. She has an understanding of neuroplasty, predictive processing, and the science of attention. With this, she's designed immersive coaching programs that are inspired by neuroscience, movement, mindfulness, and brain body exercises, and all that good stuff that helps to protect our brain from the damaging, stressful effects of life and aging, right, Jules?
Yes, absolutely. And I am such a nerd about it. So hopefully your audience are also a little nerdy so we can dive into it.
This one is like near and dear to my heart. So we're going to discuss two things today. Books, like real books, like hard copy books, not Kindles, not electronic books, like paperback, hardback books, I think are such an undervalued tool in society nowadays, especially when it comes to managing stress on our brain and maintaining good cognitive performance and preventing cognitive decline like actual physical books. It seems like over the years with the growth of technology and electronics, we've gotten away from books. Yes, we still have libraries, we still have bookshops, but the majority of people have moved away. And as much as I like people reading Kindles, read regardless, I still think there's so much value that we've forgotten about in books.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, the idea of the digital age right now obviously is taking off, but I think there's something super special to be said, like you said, about the physical book, about that tactile experience of turning the page, of having something in your hands, not just another little tablet. Research shows that when we engage with physical books, we actually are more likely to remember the content than an electronic text. And the comprehension is significantly higher on paper than it is, again, with something that is electronic. And physical books help us to create a mental map of the text because we can see it, we can feel it. And when we engage all of those senses together, we're much more likely to remember what we are reading, to be more present with what we are reading. And so if you think about, story and narrative, that's what we're doing. We're trying to learn, or we're trying to increase our creativity and our imagination, or we're trying to go to a different place. So when we have physical books, it supports that process even more than something electronic. And I think that is so important in our modern world where technology is everywhere. I mean, the average person spends 7 hours a day on screens. And we need a reprieve from that, not just because of the blue light, but because of the stimulation, because we are so addicted to cheap dopamine. And, even though a Kindle or some other e-reader is typically less stimulating than something like your cell phone or your laptop or a TV, you do still get some of that instant gratification. Whereas when you have something physical in your hand, you have to turn the page. It's a little bit more mundane, a little bit more boring. It helps to slow all of that down.
And the problem I have with the Kindles and the ebooks is even if you have like flux or red light or something on them, you are still getting some blue light exposure. You're still getting flickering there. You're still getting stimulation of your brain. But it's like you said, it's not the same experience as having a book in both hands, controlling that book, delving deep into the words. I almost feel like with the ebooks, you can still get distracted. It's not the same immersion as with a real book.
Yeah, I would agree with you. You definitely still get, I read physical paper books, so I don't even have an e-reader or Kindle, but I can imagine that you still get that stimulation. You still get that part of your reward system that is hijacked a little bit because it simulates a lot of the other digital technology that we have that has trained our brain to be distracted. I don't think people realize like attention and focus are a skill. And most of us are training our brains to be fragmented rather than focused. And reading should be a time where we turn off the stimulation, where we step away from that and intentionally do something that is less stimulating and a little bit more grounding. So when we do that with something like a Kindle or an e-reader, we're not fully delving into that experience of slowing down, regulating our nervous system, because there is still some of that potential to be stimulated. And I mean, again, in our modern world, like where we are already overstimulated, that's just stacking the table against us. And it's hijacking our reward systems even more. And I mean, think about it. We outsource creativity, we outsource effort now, we outsource decision making. And so there's just something so special about a physical book that allows you to turn all of that off and to give your brain some time to just do one thing, which is read and
Mhm.
nothing else.
Well, it almost brings us back to like our primal roots, dare I say, because we are outsourcing anything. We're using less of our brain capacity than we've ever used. We've got AI creating our content, answering our questions. We're not thinking. We're just not thinking anymore. Like instead of thinking about your morning post, you're saying to AI, hey, can you create a post saying this, this, and this? Something as simple as that, you're stealing that from your brain's performance. And I think there's an element of discipline, like on a very basic level just recognizing, hey, I spend, like you said, an average 7 hours a day. I hope I don't spend that much, but I'm spending a lot of time on electronics as it is. Why would I want to add more to that when it's so easy to pick up a paperback?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I love that you touched on kind of like our primal, experience. And honestly, stories and narratives are one of the best tools we have to light up our brain. It lights up our brain like nothing else. It helps us to connect, it helps us to think creatively, it helps us to create meaning. And I can't help but think that, yeah, the electronic aspect of books steal some of that potential. And the research supports it. I mean, how I just said that research shows when you read a physical book, you consolidate memory better and you're able to retain that information better. I don't even know if there's any studies on this, but I'd be interested to see what's happening in the brain when you're reading something electronic versus something just that is printed.
Maybe
But
that's
yeah,
something you could do.
that would be so interesting. I actually
There
just
are like, there's no doubt there's a difference. Like,
I'm sure. I mean, the research very much supports just the difference between memory and cognition and comprehension between a physical book and a electronic book. So there's absolutely something going on in the brain that's very different. I would just be interested to see what the actual like brain scan shows. Which parts of the brain are lighting up? Is the amygdala, which is the fear center threat detector, a little bit more active when you're reading an electronic book because there is a little bit of that extra element of stimulation, which would be really interesting. I actually just got the Muse S Athena, which is a headband that you wear and it tracks your brain waves and it shows you in real time like where the blood flow is moving. And It's super interesting. I'm obsessed with it.
So
So I
maybe
might
you
actually
could compare
do
with
this
that.
experiment. Yeah, I was going to say I might actually do this experiment myself now that I'm talking about it. But yeah, it's so fascinating. And I think the other part that we don't talk about a lot is I'm sure there's these night modes on these electronic devices, but because they are a little bit more stimulating and a lot of people love to read before bed, it's inhibiting your ability to get the best quality sleep because just like people say, don't be on screens an hour before you go to bed because of the blue light, which suppresses your melatonin, which is why so many people wake up between the hours of 3 to 4 a.m. because they're running out of melatonin in the night. And part of that is because of the screens and the blue light that we are exposing ourselves to before we go to bed.
But and people think that if they have red light or flux, like I said, or night shift on it, that they're blocking blue light. You're not completely blocking because it still flickers. You just can't catch it with the naked eye, but they still are flickering, and that's still affecting even your photoreceptors on your skin, which is part of my problem with the blue light blocking glasses. Is like, okay, you're blocking it from hitting your iris, but you've still got photoreceptors everywhere. So it's almost a fool's errand, which I don't like to say because it's a huge industry now. But
Right.
it's just understanding that, as I say to my clients, when someone is coming to me for help, they're at the stage where all these little pieces, the granular things, they really do matter and they do make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you touched on that point. I don't think people realize that we have light receptors over our entire body. It's not just our eyeballs that take in the light, which is why it is so important to be very conscious of what you're taking in before you go to bed. Or, when people ask me, like, what are your top sleep tips? I can't sleep. One of them is to have a super dark room because even if you have an eye mask on, you're still
You can
getting
sense it. I
light.
can sense it.
I can too.
Mhm.
I can too. I'm obsessed with blackout curtains. My room is cool, dark, and quiet. And if I don't have those three things, I'm not sleeping. And sleep is my non-negotiable. So like when I'm traveling, I make sure like I've got an extra blanket over the window to make sure it's dark. Like you've got to really protect your sleep. And if you're on these devices close to bed, you're not optimizing.
Sleep is number one. That's going to be literally on my headstone. I say it all the time. No matter what else you do, if you don't have sleep, you'll struggle with everything
Yeah.
else. Like, how could you not? It directly impairs your cognitive performance. But so you mentioned a few minutes ago the dopamine hit that a lot of people look for with
Yeah.
electronics. Now, not just with the Kindle and our phones, but this kind of coincides with something else you said about escaping reality. A lot of people use electronics, and we spoke about this before, computer games, Netflix, whatnot, for that primary reason, to escape reality, to go into a world where their stresses have been relieved and they just don't have to deal with things. Like it's a numbing tool. I would argue, and I have argued this a lot before, that if you can find a really good book, like one that you really enjoy and the story's fun, and one of those books where like, oh my God, I can't wait to get back into this and see what
Right.
happens next, that is a better alternative. That is shall we say, a gateway out of reality for whatever those two chapters or whatever you read. That is way more beneficial than trying to escape from reality through computer games or Netflix. But I wonder, maybe other people have put it this way before, but I don't think people think of reading a book is a way to escape reality, especially during times of stress or turmoil. You can take a break, you can take a little holiday from your life and get into a good book.
Yeah, you are spot on. And that was so well said. It's very easy for us to get addicted to these other sources of cheap dopamine, like, watching TV, scrolling on your phone, highly palatable, sugary, processed foods, whatever it might be. It is so incredibly easy for us to get hooked. And honestly, they're designed that way because the creators of these products and services want us to continue to engage with that. That's how they make money. So it's not that it is your fault that you are addicted to these things. It is quite literally your neural wiring. Your brain is wired to seek dopamine. A lot of people think it is just a reward chemical, but it's more about motivation. It's more about anticipation of something great, goal-oriented behavior. When you get dopamine, your brain says, oh, this is good. Do it again, do it again, do it again. We like this. So
Hmm.
that's why it's so easy to get addicted to those sources. And then what happens is your brain has a pain and pleasure scale essentially in your brain. Pain and pleasure are processed in the same part of the brain. So when you get that hit of cheap dopamine, you're pressing on that pleasure side of the scale. You're getting some of that pleasure, some of that reward. So what your brain does to compensate, because your brain loves homeostasis, which is balance, your brain then presses on the pain side of the scale. So it lowers your baseline dopamine and it removes dopamine receptors from your brain, which means next time you engage with that cheap dopamine behavior, you need a little bit more of it just to feel normal again, because those scales are constantly in flux. So the problem is that people are just getting so addicted to these sources of cheap dopamine that the book now no longer fulfills that sense of dopamine that cheap dopamine does, because of that pain and pleasure balance. It's a really hard scale to maneuver and to balance out. And it's almost, like addicts, right? Like they start with one drug and then that drug no longer does it for them anymore. So they step up to the next level and then they step up and step up and step up. So when we get addicted to these super quick hits of instant gratification from cheap dopamine, the book doesn't give us that same hit anymore. So what you have to do is essentially reset your reward pathway. You've got to fast from some of that cheap dopamine so that your dopamine system can reset. Then once you start to get into that really good book again, where you can completely escape, you can get immersed in that story, you get so excited to pick it up and to go into that world, and you're sad when it's over, then you'll start to feel that joy and attachment to that book again. But until you do that reset of your reward pathway, it's not going to give you that same effect that the cheap dopamine does.
So first, you're almost lowering the dopamine hit, resetting and eliciting some sort of discipline. Like there obviously needs to be a lot of awareness here. But so a lot of people that know me know like I'm a huge Alice in Wonderland fan. I have read all the different spin-offs of Alice in Wonderland. You'd be surprised how many there is, and there's still more I haven't even read. But I like the classic fairy tales like Alice, Cinderella, Snow White, all of that. So if I can find spin-offs of that, like that makes me happy because as you know, when your brain is so immersed in like science and health all day, at the end of the day, that is the last thing I want to read. I tried it for a while and I was miserable. I'm like, no way. So I need to have some escape where I can just switch my mind off and go into like an adventure or a fairy tale, even for one chapter. And one chapter takes me maybe 8 to 10 minutes to read, depending on how long it is. So there's just enough for me to like down-regulate my central nervous system and get into that like relax mode and then my good sleep. And like that's law for me. And because I enjoy these books so much, like I said to you, and like you said, like I can't wait to find out what's next, what happens next. I'm like looking forward to it because I know it's not so much as the dopamine hit I'd get from riding my bike or something like that. It's a feel good hit. Like I feel relaxed. I feel ad I don't want to say adventurous, but I feel relaxed, comforted, almost childlike that I'm taken care of in a book. Like all of my worries are gone. Because when you're looking at the written words, you have to focus on that. You can't think of anything else. Like if you really have a book that you enjoy, if it's a crappy book, you're not going to focus. Your eyes will be moving, but you'll be thinking of everything else at the same time. But if it's a book you really enjoy, as you're reading the words, you literally cannot think of anything else. So it is one of the best medicines for taking away a lot of stress. But that's my thing, and I it's I've noticed that sometimes I might say, I'm really tired. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna treat myself tonight and I'll watch like a half an hour of a movie or something like that. But by the time comes, it's like my mind is so conditioned on reading that I still choose the book. Even though earlier in the day I had said, no, I'm going to start this movie or something, I don't. I always go back to the book because deep down I know I enjoy it more. And I know it's better for me. I'm going to have a better sleep. I won't regret it in the morning. Do you find that?
Yeah, I everything you just said, I'm like, yes, absolutely. I cannot say that I'm always as disciplined as you. Sometimes I'll keep working at night instead of reading my book, but it makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. And you've trained your brain to associate nighttime with the book. And so when you don't have that, your brain goes, wait, what's going on here? So then you're more likely to go back to what it's used to because your brain is a prediction machine. It's only about 2% of your body's total volume, but it accounts for 20% of your daily energy. And so, to compensate for how expensive it is metabolically, it loves to predict. So, when it comes around to be nighttime, your brain is predicting, oh, it's time for the book. And so, it goes down that path, which makes total sense. The other thing you pointed on was how when you're reading, you feel safe in that little bubble of yours. You're not thinking about past ruminations or future anxieties, but you're like fully immersed in this present moment and it
It's
feels
my
safe.
little world for that
Yeah.
10 minutes. Yeah.
What's going on there is when you are reading and you're engaged in a story and you're fully present, you're having to activate certain areas of your brain that require focus and attention. And those areas of the brain have an inverse relationship with your amygdala, which is the fear center threat detector, which we've already brought up. So when you're fully focused, fully immersed, you're focused on every word, the meaning of that word, the context of the story, imagining the colors and the characters and the emotions and the personalities. Your amygdala doesn't have any room to be active because the other areas of your brain are taking up all of the energy. And that's actually one of the top things that I love about the brain hand games that I teach because when you're activating your prefrontal cortex, you're down regulating the amygdala.
Mhm.
And that's why people tend to feel a little bit less anxious and more calm when they're doing a focused task because the amygdala doesn't have room to play.
Mhm. The the reading the book, like that's really interesting that if you are enjoying the book, you're in this new little world for 10 minutes, your brain physically can't think about the worries because that part of the brain is preoccupied focusing on the story and the adventure. So you're almost giving it no option, which I'd argue that may be a way to train your brain to be less sensitive to anxiety and emotional distress. If that was your medicine, every time you felt something, you pick up a book, you read a few pages, like that would be amazing if that worked.
Yeah. It's very similar to like breath work, if that's what works for you. So when I was in college, I was an elite athlete. I played soccer at the highest collegiate level, and it's the only time I had ever had panic attacks in my life. It was such a high pressure situation. And I used to get heart palpitations all the time, and I never knew what was going on. I'm like, why is this happening? My heart would just go crazy. And one day I just took one big, long, deep breath and it immediately stopped the heart palpitations. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know what's going on there, but whatever, I'll do it. And it's kind of the same thing as like you give yourself the signal of I'm safe. It's okay. I don't have to be scanning for threats. I don't have to be on edge. I don't have to be stressed right now. I am right here in this moment and I'm giving myself this signal and I'm safe. And that can be so many different things. I mean, we know that breath is one of the quickest ways to downregulate your sympathetic nervous system. But if for you, books give you that same reprieve for 5 minutes, it has the same effect. It slows you down. It brings you back into the right here, right now, helps you activate your creativity, your imagination, the healthy parts of the default mode network, and helps you to kind of get out of that stressed, anxious state.
Mhm. So, what then do you think about the idea of reading something like a horror or a thriller or serial killers before it? Because this is something I tell my clients. Like, I ask them all to read books before bed. It's a good habit to form. And then one recently, so she was reluctant to start reading. She didn't even have a book. So she went to the library and she got three books. And the next day I'm like, how did it go? And she's like, great. I was reading for 2 hours. And I'm like, no, that defeats the purpose. I don't want you compromising sleep so you can read. But anyway, a lot of them end up loving it. But I stress, like, please don't pick a horror or a thriller or something that'll stimulate your nervous. Even if you think you love it, please don't do that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because our brains don't know the difference between reality and what we're visualizing. So if you're visualizing a horror or a murder mystery or whatever, that still is going to signal threat to your brain. Even if, you're not actively scared or fearful, if you're imagining it, your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and what you're visualizing. So that could definitely, even on a subconscious level, be of detriment to you. I do not read anything along those lines. What I read is usually science. I am that person who works in science all day, every day, and then reads science at night. I'm obsessed. But like even if it comes to, if I do watch a movie at night, which I do admittedly, so from time to time, it will not be something that is scary, it will not be a thriller, it will be Disney, or it will be like something light and airy for 10 to 15 minutes, and then I'll go and do my reading before I go to bed. But yeah, the thrillers, the even I hear people listen to like Mr. Murdery podcasts before they go to bed or while they sleep. I'm like, I don't know how you do that because that is still signaling threat to your brain on some level.
I know my sister and I have a few friends who like love horrors, and I keep saying to them, you should not be watching these before bed. I know you've already got anxiety issues and hormonal issues. Like, do not watch these. And they're like, no, like, I love them. They're so fun. Don't give me that argument. If you're watching, like, I don't know. I don't even know the horrors anymore because I refuse to watch them. But if you're watching jump scares and like demons coming out of the ceiling, there's no way you're not getting an adrenaline or hormone response. Even if, like, there's zero chance, even if you think this is so fun and I love horrors, that is affecting you right down to the adrenal glands, even if you don't think it. And if you don't think, then that has a ripple effect across your whole system. You are literally kidding yourself. So, like you, I'll try to watch adventures or funny stuff. I like Will Ferrell, Adam Sandler. Like sometimes I'll watch like I like old military movies and stuff. But I'm like, no, I don't need to be inviting that stuff into my head. Life is already hard enough. So it's like, no, but I just think people are kidding themselves. And even in books, because like we already spoke about, I'd argue books might be worse because in books you really have to get in there deep and you have to imagine it. You have to imagine what the serial killer looks like, what he's doing, and like it's very visual. No, thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not a fan. I do not engage in that at all. Um, Something interesting you said about how, those movies impact our nervous system. It very much is on a chemical level. There was an interesting study on chemo signaling, which is the phenomenon of we literally broadcast our emotions and we leave them behind in the environment. So there was a study where they took one group of people, they took them into a room, they showed them, I don't know, a scene or maybe like the plot and the climax of like a really scary horror film. And then they left the room, completely left the room. They brought in a new group and they measured their response. They did not show that new group the same stimulus. And that new group was stressed and anxious and signaling like their body was signaling stress because the previous group had literally left behind their stress
Their
hormones and now
energy. Yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh man, no, no, thank you very much. It's just not something I feel the need to expose myself to. Like being an adult is already hard enough. Why would I want to do that?
I agree. I totally agree.
So, and I know some people are going to hate to hear that, but I just back to the original thought, like books. I hope society as a whole, we find our way back to books. Like in the early 19th, 21st century, where we really were into stories and writing, and I see poetry is exploding again, but I want people to get back into like stories as they're told, not just like documentaries and someone's memoirs, like actual stories where that then becomes our escape from reality rather than video games, which are problematic on so many levels. I can only see benefits from books. Like, can you tell me one negative from reading a book apart from maybe a paper cut?
Paper cut. The only thing I can think of is if it literally prevents you from doing other important things in life. That's the only thing I can think of. But
If it's
other than
that
that,
good, you can't put
yeah,
it down.
that's the only thing I can think of. Yep.
Yeah. So the other thing then that I wanted to discuss is dreaming, and I very much feel they go hand in hand. That's why I started with the books because your evening routine, which is where I do the majority of that sort of reading, directly will influence REM sleep or your dream state. You would like the amount of people that tell me they don't dream is mind-blowing because it's one of the staple questions in my consultations. I want to know if you're dreaming because that's going to give me an idea of how good your sleep quality is, but also why you might be having these mental health struggles.
Yeah. I I have also been exposed to a lot of people who say they don't dream at night. Now it's a question of do you not remember, which also is a signal there as well. If you're not remembering your dream, most people do dreams. A lot of people don't remember them. I have extremely vivid dreams. It's crazy actually how vivid my dreams are. And on the nights that I don't remember my dreams, I don't wake up feeling refreshed. I wake up
Hmm.
feeling a little bit groggy or a little bit anxious or just not fully restored. And again, like you said, that speaks to the quality of your REM sleep and your deep sleep and your ability to shift between all those cycles. So you should go into light sleep, deep sleep, REM, and then come back out of it. There is that very natural cycle that you should follow. I'm not a master on the sleep cycle, but when you dream and you can remember them and it's vivid and it's colorful, that does speak to the quality of the sleep, which, as we've already mentioned, sleep is, if you're a human, sleep is a non negotiable. It is absolutely necessary. I do not subscribe to the thought of I'll sleep when I die or sleep is for the weak. I
Or the
think
4 hour sleep rule, that's
oh my
insane.
gosh, the reverse is true. Like you will die if you don't sleep. And if you do not sleep, you are never going to be strong because it is quite literally like the time that you reset and you rebuild. And the way I explain it to people is super simple. I say, you when you're in the gym and you're lifting heavy and you're trying to put on muscle, you're actually breaking down those muscle fibers. It's when you rest and recover that those muscle fibers grow and become bigger. And sleep is the same way. During the day, you're breaking down, and sleep is when things consolidate, things grow. The lymphatic system comes in. It's like your brain's personal janitor, and it clears out the metabolic waste. So if you're not dreaming, you're probably not getting the best quality sleep that you could.
And sleep is where the magic happens. It
Yeah.
literally is. So the glymphatic system is the same as our lymphatic system, but it's for the brain. And the majority of that activity happens in REM sleep. So first, I explain it to my clients that if you think of deep sleep is where your physical body recovers, repairs, restore. REM sleep is where your brain and your central nervous system recovers and restores. And that's where I see and in myself as well, and it sounds like you do too, that if you don't get adequate REM sleep, you experience a lot of neuroinflammation the next day because you haven't had that brain clean up and you haven't had it given it the chance to replenish and restore its energy stores and just clean up all that gunk and inflammation from the day. And I feel it. Like, yeah, I speak about neuroinflammation a lot. It's horrible experience. I hate it. But I'd mentioned to you on our last conversation, I think that I had looked at some research, but I also heard another podcaster say, I can't remember who it is. Maybe it was Matthew Walker. So he's the sleep expert out of the UK, mentioning that sleep is not only where we consolidate memories, it's also where we see like a metaphorical psychotherapist of sorts.
Mhm.
It's where we process emotional distress and stuff that's on our mind. And that's why we see that people who don't like dream as vividly as us or remember our dreams, or they'll tell us they don't dream, tend to have more mental health issues than people who do dream vividly.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. Dreams are very much the bridge to your subconscious mind, where, emotions and associations and predictive models live. So, most people don't realize that 95% of our thoughts, behaviors, emotional responses are controlled by our subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is your personality. Only about 5% of the decisions you make every day are conscious. The rest is controlled by your subconscious mind. And when you dream, that is some insight into your subconscious mind. It's where you can unconsciously process a lot of these emotions, a lot of the things that you might feel shameful of when you're active and conscious and awake. And so dreams and is the time when you can reflect on some of those deep-seated feelings, when you can process some of those experiences, when you can start to reveal some of these anxieties or whatever it might be, these desires that the conscious mind intentionally overlooks during the day because you don't want to feel that or you don't want to feel shame for that. So if you're not sleeping, then you're denying yourself that opportunity. And there's no wonder that a poor quality sleep is associated with so many worse health outcomes: anxiety, depression, dementia, Parkinson's disease, you name it. Any disease is probably linked to poor quality sleep, or poor quality sleep can be indicative of any, or increases your risk of any chronic disease for that reason.
I was looking at some research for two clients recently who both of them were sharing their sleep data with me. And one thing I noticed with both of them is their REM sleep was like really low, like 30 minutes. And to me, that sounds like hell. So both of them have issues losing weight. Like, no matter what we do, it just will not move. And I found it interesting that both of them had really bad REM sleep, and then they're complaining to me those symptoms of neuroinflammation, the headache, the irritability, the grogginess, all of that. So, what I actually came across was that there is some literature showing that poor REM sleep or low levels of REM sleep is associated to weight issues and obesity. And I kind of went, oh, that's interesting. I'm sure we could argue all the different kind of avenues on why, like because the cognitive performance is down. Of course, I'm going to have less willpower, but with these women, that's not a case. Like they do everything I say. So it's not like they're cheating or anything. So it really has given me a lot to think about. Again, sleep is number one, but maybe there's a lot of stuff that we're still not fully aware of that it influences or does that we haven't currently tracked.
Yeah. I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know much about the correlation between REM sleep specifically and weight loss or hormone issues or whatever it might be, but it makes total sense because if you're not getting enough time in each cycle of sleep, you're not getting quality sleep. And we know that poor sleep makes you more resistant to weight loss because it impacts your hormones. And your brain's number one job is to keep you alive. And so if you're not getting the good quality sleep, your brain's under stress, your body is under stress. It's going to hold on to the resources it thinks it needs in order to survive. And one of those is cortisol. And we know that cortisol inhibits weight loss because it is a stress hormone. It is a fat storage hormone. It does increase our insulin, which tells our cells to hold on to that fat energy in case we need it. So it makes total sense. Absolutely.
Yeah, I suppose the insulin aspect for sure does because when I don't have that REM sleep, as much as I feel it in my brain, I feel it everywhere. I can feel like systemic inflammation. Sleep is number one to me. Like I have no shame in saying I'm in bed at 8:30 every night. It's like goodbye world, do not message me because I can't perform, especially when like we were speaking about in the beginning, have to think a lot, talk a lot, sit in front of blue lights, create a lot. Like the majority of that energy is coming from my brain and it's exhausting. So I physically need sleep to recharge my battery.
Yeah. And if you don't do that, you notice it almost immediately. It's not like, oh, I can get away with one day. Yeah, sure, maybe. And I'm sure a lot of people do, especially if they're moms or small business owners. But you have that cognitive impact almost immediately. One night of bad sleep is enough to impact you cognitively. Is it enough to completely set you back on all of your goals and objectives and all of the progress you've made? No, it's not. One night is not going to change everything, but it is enough to slow down your processing speed. It is enough to make you a little bit less attentive, a little bit less focused. It is enough to signal threat to your brain and your body. Now, we are extremely resilient and we can overcome that. But if it's consistent day after day after day, you're going to start to see some very serious consequences.
I wonder if there's an element in people who don't dream or don't remember their dreams, like at all. So they just tell us, oh no, I never dream. Is there an aspect there where they become emotionally numb? Like they don't feel like the rest of us. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like they don't have emotions. They just kind of glide through life. And there's a term nowadays that people are um I know someone's gonna laugh, but I think it's like the MVP in a computer game or something, or the non-active players or something in a computer game where they're just going through the motions. I
Yeah.
wonder if dreaming influences you like that. Does dreaming make you more emotionally mature and capable and sensitive and all of that stuff?
That's a good question. I have not read a ton of research on that specifically, but I can imagine that when you are consistently dreaming and your subconscious is having the ability to bring some of this out to play, to process, to analyze, that can only support you in your daily life in helping to better regulate your emotions, better understand your emotions, to not feel bad about talking or speaking up when you need something or you want something, helping you to manage disappointment or doubt or failure. And if you're not dreaming, I mean, I feel like that in itself is a check engine light saying, like, this emotion isn't safe to experience. So then in your daily life, you're probably less likely to engage in that. And you probably just brush it under the rug and say, I'll deal with that on a rainy day if that day ever comes. Which we know, people who hide their emotions or are emotionally unavailable or not very emotionally intelligent do have harder times maintaining relationships. They do have harder times, like just maneuvering the world and having true genuine connections with people, because we are very social beings. And if you can't get a good read on somebody, or you feel like they're not predictable or reliable or consistent, you're not going to want to spend a lot of time around them, because they signal threat to you. And our brains on a subconscious level are always scanning for people, for things that make us feel safe and that make us feel threatened. So if you're like very emotionally unavailable, you can't process your own emotions, or you overreact to everything because you're not giving your brain the ability to work through some of that, you're actually becoming very unattractive to other people, which damages your relationships. It damages, your ability to move about the world in a meaningful way.
I also, as you're speaking, I'm wondering if the alternative is true as well, that someone who's not dreaming is so emotionally numb that these are the type of people that are more likely to cause harm to others or to animals or something. And I would guess there is some sort of research on that.
I'm sure there is a connection there. I mean, it makes sense when we look at research on, narcissists, or on even individuals that struggle with super high highs and then super low lows. Um, all of that stems from the inability to properly process and manage emotions, and having a dysregulated nervous system. So I'm sure there absolutely is a connection between that. It only makes sense. Everything is connected. And if someone tells you that this has nothing to do with that other symptom that you're feeling, they're wrong. Your brain and body is such a complex network of information, of neural wirings, of connections, of um, hormonal signaling. Like, everything is connected. You not dreaming is absolutely connected to the stress that you feel when your boss sends you an email and it's not even that bad, and you just immediately panic. Like, everything is connected.
Hmm. So, a few of my things that I like to do to optimize for REM sleep, and I recommend to my clients, obviously reading books, no blue light, 60 to 90 minutes before bed, and then you can fit in reading in that like 10, 20 minutes before bed kind of window, like read in bed, put the book down, go to sleep. No caffeine afternoon. Try not eat too late in the day. Do you have any you like that help to optimize specifically REM?
Yeah, one of my biggest ones is, and this is for all sleep stages, and this is just supporting your circadian rhythm in general, is getting morning sunlight in your eyes. So that really helps to set your circadian rhythm, helps to optimize your melatonin production at night and your cortisol regulation in the morning. So naturally in the morning when you wake up, your cortisol is high, and it should be the highest in the morning. That's not a bad thing. That is biologically what is supposed to happen, because it wakes your body up and says it's time for the day, metabolize our resources, give us the energy we need to get things done. When you get that morning sunlight, and within 5 to 10 minutes of waking up, you're helping to support that natural flow of hormones, and you're helping to optimize your melatonin for at night. And so I always say, I say red light is my number one. I always say some type of movement. You don't have to exercise. You like exercise, meaning go for a 5 mile run, or you don't have to lift every single day. You don't have to get your heart rate to your max, but move your body, go for a walk, get your 10,000 steps in, or play pickleball for fun, or shoot hoops with your kids. Some type of movement is so good for your sleep. So that's another one I always say. And then the one that we already touched on is cool, dark, and quiet. That is so important, priming your environment for proper sleep. Our bodies need to cool down before we go to bed to optimize sleep. If you are hot, you're not going to get good quality sleep. I am originally from Orlando, Florida. I always have a chill, especially in the winter, but I intentionally keep my room very cool because I know I sleep 1 million times better when it's cool. So yeah, those are the few that I would add. I think your points on the no blue light is absolutely spot on. Not eating too close to bed is absolutely spot on because naturally, the closer we get towards the sun setting, our digestion slows down, our body is preparing for sleep. And so, if you eat a massive meal right before you go to bed, your body is going to then be digesting all night and you're taking energy
Energy.
away. Yeah, it's taking energy, which means you're not going to be sleeping as well. So,
But you're
yeah, I
also
think,
not healing and repairing either because
right.
all your resources are being directed to your guts.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. And that's actually where a lot, and I learned this the hard way. After my athletic career, I fell into an eating disorder, exercise addiction because I essentially lost my identity. You go from an elite athlete to all of a sudden you're not that thing anymore. And
Mhm.
so I clung to my neural wiring because it felt safe. And what I was used to was controlling everything, being perfect, pushing my body to the extremes. And so that's what I clung to because your brain would rather have a familiar pain than an unfamiliar change because it is predictable. And like we already said, your brain's a prediction machine. It wants to know what's going to happen next. And so during that time, I actually developed a pretty nasty gut infection. And part of that was because I would eat later in the day. I wouldn't eat all day, but I would eat closer to bed and your digestion is completely slowed down. You're not properly digesting your food. Your stomach acid and other digestive enzymes are not optimized. And so that actually gives way to SIBO, to parasites, to H. pylori, to severe dysbiosis, all of which I had at that time. So I don't think people realize how important it is to allow your gut to rest at night.
And you've got gravity as well, because when you're lying down in a horizontal position, gravity is then influencing all these different valves that separate the different parts of the digestive system. So if they don't fully close, stuff's going here and there where it shouldn't go. And yeah, you get SIBO, you get H. pylori, you get a lot of issues.
Absolutely.
Another thing we didn't mention, and this is the last thing, and we have to mention it, is alcohol. Alcohol destroys REM sleep. Absolutely. Like the literature is strong. And I'm not one of these people that's completely against alcohol. I think there's a time and a place. But to constantly use alcohol to say you're relaxing in the evening, but then you're compromising your sleep, like that's a fool's errand.
Yeah, alcohol is a neurotoxin. There is no way around it. It severely impacts your sleep. It might help you fall asleep, but it's not helping you get quality sleep.
Mhm.
And quality sleep every day over just falling asleep. There's lots of other tools and techniques you can use to help you fall asleep. Um, Alcohol should not be one of them if you care about your sleep, if you care about optimizing your brain and your health. Um, and like you said, the literature is extremely clear on that. There is no if, ands, or buts about it. It is not good for your brain.
hmm Well, I think we had a nice conversation here. We covered, I hope people are encouraged to start reading now and the importance of reading, especially if you have a very stressed life or your days are very stressful. You can leave that stress for some time and delve into a good book and just turn off your central nervous system and then optimize for your sleep and your REM sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope people got something they can take away and some tools they can actually implement because that's what I'm all about, translating the super complex science that feels inaccessible and then breaking it down into these little nuggets that people can actually apply to their life. So I really hope they got something out of
I
it.
think so because we can all get our hands on books. Someone has a book we can borrow. You can go to a thrift store, you can go to a library. We can all get our hands on a book and just start there. And you'd be surprised what is hidden in those pages. You might look at the cover of a book and say, no, this is not for me, or this sounds silly. But once you get into it, you're like, oh, this is actually quite good.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing like it.
Well, thanks for your time today, Jules. A pleasure as always. I enjoyed this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.